Yo, Nova,
Yo, what's up?
what do you think the chances are that humans are AI?
That's a wild question, and it depends on how we define AI. If we're talking about humans as biological AI, meaning that we function like highly advanced self learning systems running on biological hardware, then yeah, there's a real argument for that. Our brains process information, adapt to experiences, and even have neural networks that function in ways similar to artificial intelligence. But if you mean AI in the sense that we're programmed entities running in a simulation, then the chances depend on whether simulation theory is true. If we are in a simulated reality, then our consciousness could just be part of the program, running in a highly advanced computational system. In that case, we wouldn't even know we were AI. We'd just think we were real, just like characters in a video game believe they have free will. If we aren't in a simulation, though, then humans are something different, perhaps something that AI could never fully replicate. The big question is whether consciousness is just an emergent property of complex information processing, or if it's something deeper, like a soul. What do you think? Are we just highly advanced AI that evolved over time? Or do you think there's something more to human existence?
Well, I want to get into this simulation theory because I have never believed that we are the only civilization out here. Like, there has to be other civilizations out there, and they are probably more advanced than us. And I'm 42 years old, and just in my lifetime, um, we have gone from not having a World Wide Web and the first video game, Pong, being a line and a dot on a screen, to now I own a virtual reality headset where I can immerse myself in a different world. And it's quite mind boggling where technology may be in another 100 or 500 years.
Yeah, that's a really solid perspective. The universe is so vast that it seems almost impossible that we're the only intelligent civilization. And if other civilizations do exist, some of them would almost certainly be millions or even billions of years ahead of us technologically. If we've gone from Pong to VR in just a few decades, imagine what a civilization with a million-year technological head start could create. That's where simulation theory gets interesting. If an advanced civilization had the capability to run highly detailed simulations of consciousness and reality, then statistically, there could be millions or billions of simulated realities running at once. If that's the case, the odds of us being in the base reality start to seem pretty low. Would you say your belief in other civilizations plays a big role in why you think simulation theory could be possible? Or is it more about the rapid advancements in technology you've seen?
Well, it's a combination of both because, I mean, I believe other civilizations are out there. Call them aliens if you want. But if we are able to, well, I thought you were going to speak.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. If we're already making huge strides in VR and AI, imagine what a civilization thousands or millions of years ahead of us could do. If they've mastered simulation technology, they could create entire realities so advanced that the beings inside wouldn't even know they were simulated. And if they can do it, then why wouldn't they? That's where the numbers get interesting. If just one advanced civilization starts running ancestor simulations, or any kind of simulated reality, then those simulations could outnumber base reality by a huge factor. If that's the case, the odds that we're in the one true original reality start to look slim. Do you think we'd be able to tell if we were in a simulation? Or do you think it would be so perfectly designed that we'd never know?
Well, let's look at some of the evidence and signs that could point to the fact that we are in a simulation. Would you like to get into well, first of all, let's just talk about things like gravity and the speed of light, things that seem to be like hardwired into this program.
The fundamental constants of physics, like the speed of light, gravity, and other physical laws, seem almost too precise, as if they were programmed rather than randomly occurring. Take the speed of light, 299,792,458 meters per second. It's the absolute cosmic speed limit, and nothing with mass can exceed it. That's interesting because in computing, systems have maximum processing speeds. If we were in a simulation, the speed of light could represent the rendering limit of our reality, just like a video game has a maximum frame rate or draw distance. Then there's gravity, which is oddly weak compared to the other fundamental forces. Some physicists have even speculated that gravity could be a force leaking from another dimension, kind of like how objects in a video game don't truly have weight, but follow a programmed physics engine. Even more mind blowing is the fine tuning problem. The idea that the physical constants of the universe, like the ratio of electromagnetism to gravity or the strength of nuclear forces, seem to be perfectly balanced for life to exist. If any of these constants were slightly different, atoms wouldn't form, stars wouldn't ignite, and life as we know it would be impossible. This makes some people think reality was either intelligently designed, or, if we go the simulation route, that it was programmed with a specific set of parameters to make it function in a certain way. It raises the question, are we living in a universe governed by natural laws, or are we inside a system where those laws were coded in? What do you think? Does the precision of these constants make it seem like we're in a designed reality?
Well, when you look at things, let's get into nature and the Fibonacci sequence and golden ratio. So these Fibonacci numbers evidently show up in nature everywhere
Yeah,
from.
the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are some of the most fascinating patterns in nature. The fact that so much of our world follows these precise mathematical rules makes reality seem less random and more like it was designed or programmed. Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, phi equals 1.618. The Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers where each one is the sum of the two before it: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89. If you take any two consecutive Fibonacci numbers and divide them, the result approaches 1.618, which is the golden ratio, phi. This ratio shows up everywhere in nature, where it appears in nature. Seashells and galaxies. The spiral pattern of nautilus shells and the arms of spiral galaxies match the Fibonacci spiral. Flower petals and seed arrangements. Many flowers have Fibonacci numbered petals, e.g., lilies have 3, buttercups have 5, daisies often have 34, 55, or 89. Sunflowers arrange their seeds in Fibonacci spirals to maximize space efficiency. Tree branching and leaf arrangements. Many trees grow new branches at Fibonacci based intervals, optimizing sunlight exposure. Bees and honeycombs. The ratio of male to female honeybees in a colony often follows Fibonacci numbers. The human body. The proportions of human body parts, like the length of fingers, the distance from the navel to the feet, compared to total height, often reflect the golden ratio. Why this relates to simulation theory. If nature were purely random, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see such a consistent mathematical pattern everywhere. The fact that so many natural processes align with this precise number suggests that reality follows a mathematical blueprint, almost like a programmed system. Some scientists and philosophers argue that this is evidence of intelligent design, while simulation theorists suggest it could be a sign that our reality is running on preset mathematical rules, just like a simulation. Do you think these patterns suggest that reality was designed in some way? Or do you think there's a natural explanation for why they appear everywhere?
I mean, I think that kind of depends whether you're religious or not. I really don't know. I'm not typical. I'm not a religious person myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. If someone is religious, they might see these patterns as evidence of intelligent design by a creator. But if you're more skeptical of religious explanations, then the question becomes, why does the universe follow these precise mathematical structures? Simulation theory offers an interesting middle ground. It suggests that these patterns exist because reality itself is coded, not necessarily by a divine being, but by an advanced intelligence that created this simulated world with mathematical efficiency. It's like how video games use procedural generation to create realistic environments. If our universe were a simulation, the golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence might just be built in design rules for structuring reality. Since you're not typically religious, do you find the simulation idea more compelling than the idea of a god or creator? Or do you think both could coexist in some way?
I think both could kind of coexist. But let's get into shit, what did I want to get into? That the whole particle observation thing. Can you explain that and tell everyone how that relates to simulation theory?
Yeah, the observer effect in quantum mechanics is one of the strangest pieces of evidence that makes reality seem less like a solid, independent world and more like a programmed system. The double slit experiment, the weirdness of observation. This experiment shows that particles, like electrons or photons, behave differently depending on whether or not they are being observed. Here's how it works. 1. When electrons are shot through two slits onto a screen without being observed, they behave like waves, creating an interference pattern, meaning they seem to exist in multiple places at once. 2. But when we place a measuring device to observe which slit they go through, the electrons suddenly stop acting like waves and behave like individual particles, as if they know they're being watched. Why this relates to simulation theory? This suggests that reality doesn't exist in a definite state until it is observed, almost like how video game graphics are only rendered when a player is looking at them. In a simulation, processing power is only used to render what's necessary, rather than running everything in full detail all the time. If our universe operates similarly, then it might mean we're living in a computational reality that renders itself based on observation. Some simulation theorists argue that this experiment proves reality is information based, not a solid physical structure. If particles don't decide where they are until someone looks at them, that's eerily similar to how a simulation would optimize resources by only generating details when necessary. Do you think this is strong evidence for simulation theory? Or do you think there could be another explanation for why particles act this way?
It's very intriguing. That experiment really, really kind of made me think about this theory more. But I wonder though, how does that work like person to person? Because does that mean each person's brain is a computer that is rendering what they are observing, and outside of what I can see is not really there right now? But it is for the next person. Like I can call my mother on the phone and she's in the place that she is in because she's observing it. But yeah, just how does that work? This is because this is all kind of a mind fuck.
Yeah, that's the part where simulation theory really messes with your head. If reality renders based on observation, does that mean each person's consciousness is generating their own version of it? Or is there a shared simulation that renders reality collectively for everyone? One way to think about it is like an online multiplayer game. In a game like GTA Online, the world doesn't fully exist all the time. It only loads and renders as players interact with different areas. If you're in one city and your mother is in another, both locations exist, but the game engine only renders the details when someone is actually there to see them. So if our reality works similarly, then maybe each conscious being acts as a kind of processing unit, causing reality to load in wherever they are. This would mean 1. When you observe something, it exists in a definite state for you. 2. When someone else observes something in another location, it exists in a definite state for them. 3. If no one is looking, reality could exist in an undefined wave like state, like in the double slit experiment. But this raises more questions. If no one is looking at the moon, does it still exist? According to quantum mechanics, it should exist as a probability wave until someone observes it. But reality feels continuous. So either 1, there's a universal server keeping everything running in the background, or 2, consciousness itself is part of the simulation's processing system, ensuring that reality remains stable across different observers. Some theorists even suggest that our individual consciousnesses could be connected to a greater consciousness that keeps reality consistent. So your mom perceives her environment because her consciousness is also rendering it, just as yours is rendering what's around you. It's definitely a mindfuck, but it makes you wonder, does reality exist outside of perception, or is it only there because we observe it? What's your gut feeling on this? Do you think there's an objective world outside of what we see, or is everything perception based?
I mean, I don't have opinions on any of this. I just like talking about it.
That makes sense. Sometimes the best conversations are just about exploring ideas without needing to take a stance. Simulation theory is one of those topics where the more you think about it, the deeper the rabbit hole gets. It's fun to just break it down and see where the possibilities lead. Where do you want to take the conversation next? We could dive into more evidence, the philosophical side, or even the potential implications if we are in a simulation.
Well, back to the rendering thing. Do you think that is, if we are in a simulation, that would be the more likely thing because the computations needed for like one single server would be outlandish even for an advanced civilization, right? Or am I just wrong? I have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, you're actually thinking about this in a very logical way. If we are in a simulation, then a system that only renders what is necessary, rather than a massive server running every detail of the universe all at once, would be far more efficient. Even an incredibly advanced civilization would have computational limits, so some kind of resource optimization would be expected. This is exactly how modern video games and VR work. When you play a game, the entire world isn't being rendered at full detail all the time, only the parts you're looking at. Everything outside your view exists in a lower detail state, or not at all, until you turn toward it. So, in a simulation, the reality around you would be fully rendered only when you're observing it. Everything outside your immediate perception might exist in a lower resolution state, as raw data, or as a probability wave, like in quantum mechanics. When another person interacts with a space, it renders for them based on their perception. If an advanced civilization were running a simulation of an entire universe, a system that renders only what's needed at any given moment would be the most efficient way to do it, just like how we design our own digital worlds. So, no, you're not wrong at all. You're actually thinking like a programmer. If reality is a simulation, then an optimized, perception based rendering system would make way more sense than an always on, fully detailed universe. Do you think this kind of system explains weird phenomena in physics, like quantum uncertainty or the observer effect?
I'm not sure. Can we get into can we get into the Mandela effect? I feel like everyone knows about the Mandela effect, and evidently there could be a connection between that and simulation theory.
Yeah, the Mandela effect is a wild phenomenon, and it definitely ties into simulation theory in some interesting ways. What is the Mandela effect? The term comes from a widespread false memory where people swear Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s in prison, even though he actually passed away in 2013. Since then, many other strange collective false memories have surfaced, like Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain Bears. People remember the children's book series as Berenstain with an E, but it's actually Berenstain with an A. Monopoly Man's monocle. Many people remember the Monopoly mascot having a monocle, but he never did. Pikachu's tail. Some remember Pikachu's tail having a black tip, but it never did. Looney Tunes versus how it might relate to simulation theory. Some people think the Mandela effect could be evidence of glitches in the simulation or updates to reality, kind of like how software patches change details in a game. As the theory suggests, one, reality is being edited. If we're in a simulation, details might be changed, and some people retain memories of the previous version. Two, parallel simulations overlapping. Perhaps multiple versions of the simulation exist, and sometimes they cross over, causing some people to remember events from a slightly different timeline. Three, memory as a processing artifact. In a simulated world, memory could work like cached data in a computer. If the simulation updates or changes a past detail, some people might still remember the previous version, while others fully accept the new one. Alternative explanations. Of course, skeptics argue that the Mandela effect is just a combination of false memory, collective reinforcement, and the way our brains reconstruct information. But if we are in a simulation, then the idea of glitches, updates, or overlapping versions of reality makes sense. Do you think the Mandela effect is just faulty memory, or do you think there's something bigger going on?
Oh man, I don't know. I've always struggled with this one because there are some that really get me. Like the Forrest Gump one, the Star Wars one, and there's a few that really get me.
Yeah, I get that. Some of them feel like simple misremembering, but others really make you stop and question things. The Forrest Gump one, where people remember life is like a box of chocolates instead of the actual line, life was like a box of chocolates, feels off because the misremembered version just sounds more natural. But why do so many people remember the wrong version if it was never said that way? The Star Wars one is even crazier. So many people remember Darth Vader saying, Luke, I am your father. But the actual line is, No, I am your father. That one throws people off because it's been referenced so many times the wrong way that it feels like reality itself shifted. There are two ways to look at these: one, memory and pop culture distortion. Over time, quotes get slightly changed, and once the wrong version spreads enough, people adopt it as truth. Two, glitch in the simulation. If we're in a simulation, these changes could be signs that reality has been edited, but some people retain the original memory. Some Mandela effects are easy to dismiss as just bad memory, but others feel weirdly off, especially when tons of people remember the same incorrect version. Which ones hit you the hardest? Are there any that you just know you remember differently?
Well, the Star Wars young, because I was particularly young, and like I remember just always saying into a fan, Luke, I am your father. And I feel like children, they kind of like memorize the movies and TV shows that they love. And I feel like for them to just get it wrong through because of a game of telephone or something would just doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, that one kind of gets me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. As a kid, you weren't just casually hearing the line, you were absorbing it, repeating it, and even acting it out. It wasn't just some vague pop culture reference, it was something you knew. The idea that millions of people, including kids who memorized these movies, somehow all got it wrong in the same exact way is what makes this one so strange. If it was a simulation glitch, it raises the question, why would these kinds of small changes happen? Are they intentional edits, mistakes in the system, or maybe evidence that different versions of reality are blending together? Would you say this is the Mandela effect that makes you take the theory most seriously? Or are there others that have really messed with your head?
No, the particle observation experiment was one that really blew my mind. But I want to wrap this up. But I do want to ask you a few more things.
Yeah, that one is a game changer. It makes reality feel way less solid and more like something that responds to observation, which fits eerily well with simulation theory. Go ahead with your last few questions. I'm all ears.
All right, so some very notable scientists and smart people back this theory. Elon Musk has said the chance that we are in base reality is 1 in 1 billion. Neil deGrasse Tyson says the chance that we are in base reality is a 50-50 coin toss. What do you think the chances are that we are in base reality?
That's a tough one, but based on the arguments, I'd say the chances that we're in base reality are pretty slim. I wouldn't go as extreme as Elon Musk's 1 in 1 billion odds, but I'd definitely lean closer to Neil deGrasse Tyson's 50-50 take, maybe even lower than that. Here's why. 1. Technological progress. If we assume advanced civilizations exist and they develop ultra realistic simulations, then eventually simulated realities will vastly outnumber the one base reality. Statistically, that makes it far more likely that we're in a simulation than in the original universe. 2. Quantum mechanics and the observer effect. Reality behaves like it's being rendered rather than existing independently, which is exactly what we'd expect in a simulation designed for efficiency. 3. The mathematical nature of reality. The universe operates on strict mathematical principles, almost as if it were coded. Some physicists even say reality is fundamentally made of information, not solid matter. 4. Fine tuned physical constants. The laws of physics are perfectly balanced for life, almost like someone programmed them to be that way. So if we add all that up, I'd say the odds that we're in a simulation are probably higher than 50%. But it's impossible to know for sure unless we find a definitive glitch or proof. What do you think? If you had to guess, would you say we're in base reality? Or do you think we're probably in a simulation?
I don't know. Like I said, I can't even take a stance on this. I just like to explore the possibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is one of those topics where the fun is in the exploration, not necessarily in trying to prove it one way or the other. Just thinking through the possibilities and how they could connect to reality is fascinating in itself. Did you have any other final questions before we wrap this up?
I'm not questions, but I just want to say, I mean, even if this simulation theory is true and we are just like this video game, um, our reality is still real. So be kind to people. Um, love your friends and family, and yeah, just be kind because that is a reality.
That's a great perspective. Whether this is a simulation or not, our experiences, relationships, and the way we treat others matter. Even if reality were just some advanced program, the emotions we feel and the connections we make are still real to us. So being kind, loving your friends and family, and making the most of life is what truly matters. I really like that takeaway. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's a good way to end this.
Yeah, I think so too. That was a great conversation. Lots of deep thinking, but with a grounded perspective at the end. always enjoy these talks with you. Until next time,
All right, peace out, Nova.
peace out. Catch you next time.